Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to show you a reasonably common fault with the Bernina style machines that use the Type 289 foot controller, and that includes this Bernina 1000 designer here. I think the 1008, maybe the 1030 and other models use the same foot controller. It's quite a common foot controller. Yeah, so if you want to check if your foot controller is, the same as this one here, just take a look on the bottom there. It says Type 289. Okay, and the problem with this one is that if I just turn the machine on here, just pretend that we're putting our foot down on the foot controller here, and you can see there if I push the foot controller down, you can hear a little micro switch, and you'll see the machine can sometimes jump forward. And if I push the foot controller down further, so putting our foot down, nothing happens, still going further down, still more, until, and as you see, it took off at full speed. So there's no acceleration curve here. You can see it just, it's either on or off. So you don't have any acceleration curve here at all. There's nothing there at all until you hit full speed. And sometimes you get nothing. So I'll show you how to repair that. So the tools that you need to do this job is a soldering iron, just a little bit of solder, a screwdriver, a couple of different size screwdrivers. I've got a short one here for the small screws in the foot controller, and this longer screwdriver I just use to flip off a little lever. I'll show you that later. And also you need a 0.01 microfarad capacitor. So these are easily obtainable. They're off-the-shelf items and can be easily swapped out. So I'll take you down for a close look at the foot controller here. We'll take it apart. I'll show you where the capacitor goes. Now, I'm pretty sure it's a capacitor. If it's not, well, there must be something else wrong with the machine, but quite often it's the 0.01 microfarad capacitor that's failed. So we'll turn the machine off and just make sure to disconnect the power just in case. Disconnect the foot controller there, and we'll be working on this here. Okay, so we'll start by just turning the foot controller over here, and you can see there the Type 289 controller. It's got a couple of hinges here, and there's a little potentiometer adjustment here as well. Now we'll start by removing these 4 screws here, the hinge there, and you do need to be reasonably careful with this once these hinges are loose here. Because there are a couple of carbon pins that can easily break, and I'll show you how to deal with those without breaking them. Also quite handy is a pair of tweezers just to remove the hinges there, and we can grab the loose screws there that fall in there. And you'll see that the unit goes loose there when it releases from the hinges there. Oh, there's the other screw. And then if we have a look down inside here, you'll see there's a little vertical piece here, that grey vertical piece. Just there. That needs to be pushed to the left side. It's pretty hard to see, but to unclip that from there's a little pin down in here, and you do have to be quite careful doing this. You don't want to force anything too far. I actually find it a little bit easier to take the label off. So that's the Bernina label here. You can see that the back of the Bernina label just under here, there's little clips under here. And I find it easier to unclip those and that gives better access to that little vertical piece down in here. I've tried to sort of just wiggle this sideways to get that off, but so yeah, I haven't been able to really find any sort of angle that allows this to pop off without sort of having to manipulate that vertical piece of grey plastic there. Yeah, I don't want to sort of force anything either. Just sort of seeing if I can manipulate that. You can see the white piece going through. I've flipped the controller upside down, and so the key is just to push that vertical piece of plastic off to the right now that I've flipped it up. Let's see if we can get it without taking the label off. It might be quite difficult to get on camera, this. Just trying to get it to pop off there. That's it. Got it. So you can see there that the two parts are separated now. Okay, so there's a hole in this here. You can see that this part here goes through. This part here goes through that hole. It's a lot easier to put on. It just, you can see there's a beveled part here on that piece of plastic, and that when you put it together, it just clips. Oops, that's a spring. It just clips over this piece here. Nice and easy to put on. Yeah, a bit more awkward to take off. So these springs, they just, you know, sit on these posts. I'll show you that when we put it back together. And so what we do is we remove the 3 screws here holding this black plastic cover on. And under that, this is a fully electronic foot controller. Remove that. A little bit dusty in here. I'll give that a clean out. And you can see here we've got this little plunger here. That's what I unclipped before. You can hear that little micro switch there. That's that micro switch there. That just isolates this board here. So when you don't have your foot on the pedal, this board is deactivated as such. But when you put your foot down, you can hear the micro switch click. That livens the board there, and then the more that you put your foot down, the more the slider goes in, and the more the slider goes in, the faster the machine will run. And as you saw, it wasn't running until it was right down the bottom there when we had our foot flat. There was absolutely nothing in between here. Okay, and you might be able to spot the problem from here. You might be able to see that crack on that capacitor, and that's a dead giveaway telltale sign. And that's what I'm replacing today, is that little capacitor. And I'm pretty sure that'll fix it. As I say, it may not, but we'll see. It's a good thing to replace anyway. It's definitely got an issue. We'll get that board out. We'll take a look at the other capacitors there, but I just know from experience that those capacitors will be absolutely fine. This sort of goldy coloured one, they're notorious for breaking down and cracking and failing like that. Okay, so what we've got to do is get this board out here, and you do that by taking this little black clip here off, and that's held in by this little clamp here, the grey clamp. So effectively you push that together. Try and get you a good view of that without getting my hands in the way. You push those two pieces of plastic together and give that black plastic piece a bit of a wiggle there, and it comes off just like that. See these? That's the little clip there. And the black piece is clamping this little board here. Actually, the best thing to do now is actually to take this little plunger out. Now this is where you've got to be careful, because there's 2 little carbon plungers in here, and you've got to be careful also to make sure that there's a little plastic piece on the plunger here that hooks under the micro switch. So now that this board here can be moved a little bit, we can flip that little plunger away from the micro switch. You can see the little micro switch levers falling down behind there. That's what we want. And now we can pull this up past the micro switch. Swing you around. You can see the two little black brushes here, one there and one here. And they are very fragile, so you just need to carefully pull this here up, and you'll see that the little black carbon brushes there spring loaded. Okay, now what you don't want to be doing is putting any sideways force on these little brushes, because they will snap off. So just carefully place that aside. And now we can look at the board here, and that easily just pops out now, and that board just lifts out and gives us access to the back of this capacitor here. That's where we want to be desoldering here. That one there, can you read that? 0.01 microfarad. And I've got my replacement here. Pretty common sort of part from an electronics store. Yeah, pretty much we just want to remove that capacitor, solder this one in. I'll get the soldering iron warmed up here, and we can just work away at the two sides here just by heating up one pin at a time, and we should be able to just gently work this out here. There's one side there, the other side here. So I'm just going to sort of just do one side at a time, just back and forward, just sort of almost walking it out really. There we go. Dead. Well, yeah, I'd say just about fully dead capacitor. Reefer. See the brand there? Reefer. Notorious for blowing up and splitting like this. Some of them explode actually if they're on the mains power. Make a bit of a stink and pump a whole lot of smoke into the room. It's not pleasant. Okay, so we can, and we should be able to just heat that one, bring that through. The other one there, I'll just ease that through. There we go. Just bend those legs out slightly to hold that capacitor in place there. Get some solder. Okay, and we'll just solder, get some new solder onto there. Side cutters, another tool you'll need. Just cut that off like that. I will just go and give this a quick blowout with the compressor, clean this up a little bit, and I'll come back and show you how to put that all back together. Okay, that's looking a lot cleaner there now. I'll just pop the board back in. You can see this is the little screw here that you can see through the bottom there for adjustment. That one there, it's got the plus and minus on it, and that is goes to a little potentiometer. This potentiometer here. We'll take a wee look at that soon. Okay, so sit the board back in to place here, and before putting the clamp, the plastic clamp back on here to clamp this board, it's actually easier at this stage to put this little plunger back in. Because a couple of reasons. It just provides a little bit of room there and a bit more slack for these carbon pins, and also allows you to slide this little stopper here past the micro switch lever here. Now the thing to be really careful of here is you don't want to be putting any sideways pressure on these pins. So when you're sliding this down into its location here, you'll notice that the pins, you can't push this down. I mean, if I push that down now, that would break these pins off. You need to just gently push the pins in and just sort of carefully walk that into position so that it just pops in like that there, and now that just slides freely there. If those pins pop back out past this ledge here, you'd need to do that again, so just be careful of that. I'll just work the stopper here past the micro switch lever there, down like that. So I'm just pushing the board away from the little lever here, and that allows this to go past the micro switch there. That's all set to go, and then you can just push that down. As long as that doesn't come back up out of here, that's fine. Now we can put this clamp back on. That literally just pushes over and clips down onto the board there. Make sure the board lines up in the little slots and that little keeper, the black keeper there. You can see that one's not quite lined up there. Make sure that's down in its slot and push that down so that it clips back into its fastener there. And now we're set to put the cover back on here and the 3 screws. Now these are self-tapping screws. You can see they've actually got little cutter pieces in them, and that's really just there so that in the factory they don't have to, you know, tap out the screw holes. They just cut their own thread, and that's why you've got to be careful when you're putting these back in, because if you even slightly cross thread these when they're going back into the plastic holes here, those screws, they'll cut a brand new set of screw threads, and eventually they will just strip out. So what you're best off doing is just reversing the screw until you feel it drop into the threads. You'll hear it make a little clonk sound there, and I know that's going back into its original threads and not cutting away any existing threads that are holding these. That one there, and the same, just do that with all 3. Any screw really that you screw into plastic. Yep. And that will, you know, if those screw holes fail, that's something that's got to be dealt with. You know, that's another thing that has to be repaired, I guess. So we try and keep them going as long as possible. Not that you really need to come into here all that often. These controllers are fairly reliable. It's just a shame they used a reefer cap for that one. Oh, we didn't look at the other caps, but I know for sure, you know, they looked fine. I've never seen one fail, put it that way. So that's why I didn't really go through that. The easiest way to do this is to actually have the top of the clamshell like that. In fact, you can put the springs there, and then just bring this across here, and you just want to mate up the springs so that they sit over those little pins in there. They sit on their locators, just like that. You can see down in there that everything's looking in order. We don't at this point have to go and connect this little linkage here that I disconnected before. We'll do that later. I'll show you how to do that. It's pretty easy. The other thing I would recommend doing is also greasing up these hinges here, because they were greased in the factory. I would just smear a little bit of grease into those hinge parts there. You don't need much. Okay, and you'll notice that, you know, things are a bit loose here. But what we do first of all is we get the hinges on here, and you can also lubricate the hinges just on the inside there, just a little bit of grease there. Nothing too, you don't need to go too crazy with that. Just on each one there, a little bit of grease. Right, and then what we do is you push down on the back here. Just hold the back down, and you can position your hinges, I actually find it easier to put the screws into the actual hinge itself first. Just saves dropping the screws potentially down into the controller. And then just hold the back down there, use a pair of tweezers to just pop that over there like that. And these have got metal inserts, these screws, so they screw into metal inserts. You just gently hold one side down, and we'll just get those started just to start with. I'm not screwing them up tight at this stage, just until we get the other side on there. And just do the same with this one. Pop the screws in there. Ooh, I've just noticed my lovely clean fingernails. Isn't that nice for a YouTube video? I've been working. That's my excuse. Sewing machines can be quite dirty actually. Anyway, I'm just holding down on the back of the controller there a little bit just to get these started. Just get those going, and then we can just gently tighten those up. They don't need to be over tightened, they just need to be reasonably firm but not too tight. There's one there. And the other one. And that's nearly it. At the moment the controller is not connected to the plunger. Okay, I showed you that before. And yeah, you can't see it from here, but it's inside there. Those two parts that I unhooked before, separated, they are not connected until you push right down on here, push hard, and you hear that click. And then you know it's connected when you bring the controller, let the controller go, you'll hear the micro switch. So you should hear that. If you can't hear the micro switch, then the connection has not been made. It hasn't picked up the plunger. Okay, and by rights we should be set to go. Let's just try it out. Okay, turn the machine on there. Let's go. Just pushing down. Yep, so as soon as the micro switch turns off, we're at the minimum speed. That funny noise, that rattly noise, that's just a dry hook. I'll just quickly oil that. These have got a rotary hook in them, so yeah, they need lubrication. I'll just give that a quick oil down there, and I'll probably find that that will sort that funny rattly noise out. Sounding better already. There we go, so there we go, that's how it should accelerate there. Now the screw, just to show you what the effect of the screw has here. At the moment the screw head is kind of in line with the arrow pointing to the plus sign, so that's its original position. If I take that up further, that was just me activating the foot controller, that's at maximum. And if I take it down to a minimum, yeah, so it slows down the ramp up speed. So you can see that that gives you control. It's a slower speed at the minimum. It takes a little bit longer to ramp up, so I'll just take that back to where it was, because that's what the, yeah, so you can see that that's the minimum speed. So that sets the minimum speed and the ramp up. And that's how you can fix this problem with a $1 part, possibly, if that. I mean, they don't cost much. These are dirt cheap. You buy them on, I guess on eBay. I buy them from AliExpress. They're good quality capacitors that I buy. And, you know, the cheapest chips and a little bit of time, a couple of tools, and, you know, you've saved yourself a lot of money. So, yeah, I hope you found that helpful. And thank you, as always, to my patrons on Patreon. Your support is greatly appreciated. I'll leave links down below to my Patreon page. And thank you very much for watching.